joining us on the Heischer Automotive Group hotline is our friend, Jonathan Jones, CBS NFL insider. JJ, what's up, man?
What's going on, fellas? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, finally happy to get you on our independent podcast adventure.
Love it.
So I don't think we're going to make as much money as David Tepper and eventually buy an NFL team, but one can hope and wish.
I don't know. A lot of money in podcasts these days.
So I've heard that gambling money really needs to start coming through now. In 2024, we'll get it here in North Carolina. That's actually, so I wanted to start with the Panthers. And I feel like there's and correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression that I'm getting is that they really started to put on a charm offensive now that Bryce Young, all the speculation and what they wanted to do, they pick him and they're trying to kind of overcome the questions that everybody had in terms of his size. And the charm offensive has started. Is that kind of like an accurate representation of what we're seeing this summer leading into training camp?
I agree with you that there is a charm offensive happening. I would say that it's probably multi-pronged. First of all, all 32 teams are putting on a charm offensive right now, right? So there's that.
The third string tight end, Double J.
Yeah,
see this catch.
Obviously, you have a robust digital and social media department there with the Carolina Panthers, perhaps, and they've done it better than a number of teams. So that charm offensive is going to stand out among other NFL teams. But then I would just say that the years under Matt Rhule, they were really tough on a lot of people. I know, obviously, the fans, but they were really tough on a lot of people that worked there, and really kind of the creativity juices weren't able to flow necessarily. And so now, if you're a little unbridled, that you can breathe just a little bit more. Look, folks are really happy that it's not Matt Rhule there. So. Yeah. It could be Frank Reich. It could kind of be anybody. But the fact that you have a fantastic human in Frank Reich, you got the number 1 overall pick, a very affable young man in Bryce Young, and you're 0-0 in perhaps the worst division in football this season. Yeah, okay, you're going to have a lot of charm happening.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I get the part about Matt Rhule. Giglio and I actually talked about this when they announced that Bryce Young was going to be elevated to QB1, going into training camp.
Look at these adults
running
right?
the room.
What?
And there's almost like Frank Reich might work out, but I do worry sometimes that we were so just over the previous regime and how clownish the behavior was, the way of the Panther and one of us and the very college nature of it all that Nebraska fans seem to be lapping up right now, that it's almost possible to give what the Panthers are doing right now too much credit. Does that make sense? Because it was so opposite from what we've seen.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously David Tepper has admitted as much. And he has said it, but it's also the tacit admission of when he hired Matt Rhule and signed him to that ridiculous contract and then allowed him to bring in all of his Baylor and Temple buddies onto the coaching staff with no NFL experience. Well, now look who you have now, right? I mean, you have literal centuries of coaching experience with the Carolina Panthers. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you'd never had an experienced NFL coach on one side. Now you have too many experienced NFL coaches. I don't think that's a bad thing. However, when you do have all of those people, you get the chefs in the kitchen sort of deal. And so until these guys start to really work together throughout a game week, when will Frank Reich hand over the play calling duties to Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator? You have Josh McCown, a quarterbacks coach, his first time really coaching in the NFL. And so how are all of these dynamics going to work? You have a senior offensive assistant in Jim Caldwell. You have Frank, there are a lot of people with a lot of hands and very capable hands. But who gets to be the last person in the ear of Bryce Young? Yeah. Is the message going to be unified? All of those things they have to figure out. I think they can and will figure it out. But until we get there, who knows?
I'm going to give you the good problem I think the Panthers are going to have this year. I think they're going to be good. They're going to pull a Duke football. They're going to pull a UNC football. They're going to pull an NC State football.
Okay.
They're going to hire a new coach. They're going to go from 4-8 to 8-4, and everyone's going to be excited. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win their division. And then everyone, it's been since 1980, JJ, you know this.
I do.
We're going to sit here and wait. Well, when do you go from 8-4 to 12-0? When do you go from 8-4 to 11-1? How do you go from, just being in the playoffs to Super Bowl contenders? I'm telling you this as a good thing for the Panthers.
It's a great thing.
They are now going to be functional. This is the part where then you start scanning that roster and going, who are the true difference makers on that roster? I'm glad they kept Banks. I'm glad. if they hadn't, that's a player I think is a true difference maker. But I think you're going to see, and you're going to have to write all these things, JJ. If you still write, I don't even know, because like you're Mr. CBS, all this stuff.
Yeah, sometimes I write. Thanks for reading.
No, you've graduated.
You graduated.
We're so proud of you. We're like the great gay parents with our. Look at
our large adult son.
Look at our son. Like, oh my God, it's amazing.
You guys.
But you're gonna have to talk about what a great story, what a feel good story the Panthers are, and they're gonna get to the playoffs. They're gonna probably lose in the first round, and then next year everyone's gonna be like, all right, Super Bowl. And that's where I think the talent discrepancy comes in. But I think this is the year you enjoy all of this stuff.
Sure. If they make the playoffs, that's fantastic.
It is.
Really, even if they don't win the NFC South, which is probably going to be, in terms of record, the least competitive division in football. Look, the Falcons and the Saints could both make the playoffs. I think the Saints are going to win the division based off what I saw in New Orleans recently and how they've cobbled together their pieces, but it's still the NFC.
Oh, Derek Carr. I'm like, who is their quarterback? What are we talking about here, buddy?
But I mean, like, think about the 3 NFC wildcards. You're going to get one out of the NFC East, right? It's going to be a Dallas or a Philadelphia, maybe a Washington, but like, you're really going to get one there. And then what happens, right? The NFC and the wildcards are really going to be up for grabs. So if you believe that the Panthers, if they can get 9 wins, any NFC team with 9 wins gets into the playoffs. That's the sort of theory I'm with you for, right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And so, yeah, there is going to be a talent discrepancy at certain positions for the Panthers. I think that they know that they don't have a true go out there and win a divisional round playoff game #1 wide receiver. A lot of questions at corner, certainly starting the beginning of the season with J.C. Horn and his injuries. And you need another pass rusher. These are all things that they know, of course, but if you win 9 games, you make it to the playoffs, you keep it competitive, or at least don't get completely embarrassed and disrespected in a wild card game, then yeah, people should feel good about the next season because you know what you have, add to it, get better.
Jonathan Jones.
Indeed. I said Banks. Burns.
Yeah. I was like, I'm just going to roll with that.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we?
It's Monday.
It's like when I was getting all my Sams confused, The same thing. I don't think there's a guy on the Panthers roster named Sam. I could be wrong. So I guess that would be the question, because you brought up the skill position groups, and I think I'd seen something aggregated recently about DJ Moore. Part of the deal to get Bryce Young, something had to give for Chicago. Sure. I get why Chicago went for DJ Moore, because they're giving Justin Fields that receiver, that giving him a chance with DJ Moore. So I feel, though, that I almost feel like not everybody can have that quote unquote #1 receiver. We get really, really caught up in what we've seen like true Super Bowl contenders. But I feel like the moves that they made make sense in that good veteran wideouts that can work with the young talent, right?
You took a scratch off too in the draft.
You did. But like when what was it? When Nuke Hopkins was out there, right? And I don't think he's back from vacation. He hasn't signed anywhere yet. But I saw Panthers fans kind of getting like thirsty about DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I've seen multiple reports where DeAndre Hopkins has a little bit of a reputation of not really. He's kind of like the Allen Iverson we're talking about practice kind of vibe, right? And if I'm the Panthers, I don't want to put that in the environment. But I feel like the decision they made was to just kind of get good, older, veteran, understand your role guys around him that truly help his first year. Because, hey, man, it's going to come at you fast.
It's 1,000% right. Look, if you're going to get a Bryce Young, you got to give something up, right? I live here in Boston. You want to get Kristaps Porzingis. I'm sorry, but they don't want Malcolm Brogdon. They want Marcus Smart. So you're going to have to give up Marcus Smart to get the guy, right? And so, yeah, of course, you'd love to have the #1 overall pick and Bryce Young and the guy with the moxie of Tom Brady from the neck up, and then also be able to keep the legitimate #1 receiver. That's not the way life works. So they go out there, and maybe Terrence Marshall Jr. really turns it on. Jonathan Mingo continues to have the sort of camp that he had in spring workouts. Fantastic, right? It is hard to find that true #1. I was just in Tennessee, and there's a reason that they want DeAndre Hopkins, even with some of those reputational marks that you mentioned, Joe, and that's because they know that they don't have anything close to a #1. Treylon Burks,
right,
at his best, is going to be a very good #2. And so if you feel that you're right there and you have some good veteran leadership in there, then go ahead and make that move. Unfortunately for the Carolina Panthers, or fortunately, depending on how you're looking at their trajectory and where they are on the spectrum, That's not where they're at right now. And so I completely understand bringing in an Andy Dalton who now knows what it's like to be a backup, right? It's not his first year going from starter to backup. It's an Adam Thielen who knows that his skills are diminished slightly from his top seasons with the Minnesota Vikings, but knows that he can still get it done. No question about it. A great locker room presence. And you have an offensive line that you're able to keep intact. So that continuity is going to be there for Bryce Young and for that running game. So because of those things, if you were bullish on the Panthers up to the point of they should be getting into the playoffs, I'm totally okay with that. But you should also realize that, you know, they are a significant injury at one key position away from a 6-win season.
I think that's defensively too. I mean, you mentioned that I'm not really worried about the Panthers offensively this year. Actually, I think the part that was their strength last year and what kept them from, kept them in the game. They almost made the playoffs.
They were able to run the ball.
It was running the football with the mentality that Steve Wilkes was able to instill in those guys, right?
And defensively, they were pretty sound. But unfortunately, with the injuries, you mentioned corner, I think that might end up being one of their biggest liabilities.
Well, they don't even know what that guy is.
Oh, they really don't. They really don't. Jonathan Jones, CBS
idiot
NFL insider, joining us here.
All of this nonsense.
All right, I wanted to get back to the too many cooks in the kitchen. We'll close the Panthers conversation with this. In that, I'm with you. You bring in this highly paid veteran coaching staff, and we talked about lessons learned. I guess the unknown, and we're not going to know this maybe for the next couple of years, is whether or not David Tepper truly learned any lessons as owner of the Carolina Panthers and how involved he wants to be. And I know you've told us stories on air about like
Teddy Bridgewater
and who I want to get and all those types of things. So how do you feel, or what do you think the sense is talking to folks in Charlotte about whether or not David Tepper's also learned some lessons here?
Okay, so this is going to be the classic fool me once, fool me twice, can't get fooled again. Okay.
All right.
So all of those stories that I have regaled you all with over the years, all true. I think that Tepper, with some truth serum, would say that he has been, in his first 4 or 5 years, been more meddlesome than maybe he should have been. And maybe he should have listened to some of the stories from his fellow owners who have been owners for 10, 15 years and realized, oh, the mistakes you made in the first 5, I shouldn't make those. Instead, he repeated them. Mm-hmm. From what I hear from people in Charlotte, right now, the reviews are very positive and very solid. Again, we talk about the charm offense. We talk about being 0-0 with the number 1 overall pick and hope in the post-Rhule era. But I'm hearing that while Tepper, of course he wanted to be clued in on who they were going to pick at number 1. And of course, he wanted to bring a caravan of people to those pro days, which a lot of people around the league thought certain things about it. But the fact is he let Scott Fitter and Frank Reich make that decision, right? And he's letting the football people make the football decisions. Mm-hmm. There's still some business decisions that I believe, he is extremely involved with. I think he has every right to be, but I am cautiously. There's usually a word after cautiously. I'm not willing to go cautiously optimistic.
All right.
But in talking with folks there is some optimism there that, okay, those were clearly mistakes. I'm going to raise my hand and own those in the worst 4 or 5 year stretch in Carolina Panthers history in terms of wins and losses. You have to wear it. And clearly I have to learn from those mistakes and be better. So that's where it stands right now.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Do you have anything else for JJ?
No, it's just great to see him.
I know.
I didn't even realize he was in Boston.
Yeah.
Where have I been?
Yeah, where you been?
I don't know. I know. That's what I'm saying. You've moved up the ladder, man. You're like too important for us.
He's in peak. Mac Jones is totally going to work land right now.
Not Bailey Zapp.
Oh, I heard it's a real competition.
No. Who's the new offense coordinator? They got Bill O'Brien.
Bill O'Brien. Yeah. So right now, Mac Jones has the position pretty well locked down.
That's the real answer.
Now, look, we all know that the real
not
story.
That Bill Belichick can't coach without Tom Brady. No, that's not a thing. His record without Tom Brady is under 500. What? No, that's not a thing.
We all know the real story.
See, that one time he scouted the film and he saw that if you jump the route when the Seahawks call the dumbest effing play in the history of the Super Bowl, that makes you the greatest coach of all time. Surely you know this, Double J. You're in Boston.
Wow. I actually think that Belichick is the GOAT.
No slander.
Look at you.
It's going to be great when the Patriots have a better record than the Jets, though.
No, they will not. Absolutely.
That may very well happen.
That will absolutely not happen.
I'm just saying. I'm telling you right now, look,
he's crawling to that Schuler record. He's crawling to get his kid the job.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing. I've seen all of this before.
His quarterback is not talking about how words are interesting because it's called
but the
spelling.
Jets have talent.
While he's doing
but have no talent.
Right, but if the Jets have a quarterback who's on some ayahuasca throwing him the ball, it might not work out.
Dude, he's stronger than ayahuasca.
I'm telling JJ, I'm telling you right now,
Tom
man.
Draper acid trip episode.
I'm telling you right now, this whole marriage between Aaron Rodgers and the Jets is gonna just go. It's. I might go psychoactive with the way sports talk radio is going to work if they don't get off to a good start. And Aaron Rodgers is going to be a prairie dog looking at everything that the New York Post has on the back page. This.
I do think that a lot of people are not accounting for, and Joe Ovies, you clearly are, that this has a strong potential to not go the right way early on.
Oh, my goodness.
And if it does not,
are
we going to see the Jets of yesteryear happen again and again?
Yes.
And again.
Yes.
So,
all right, man. Hey, we appreciate you making some time. Hopefully you have a good summer before everything kicks back up for the NFL season. And we appreciate your support throughout all of this, JJ.